Welcome to Latchkey Legends. I'm Santanu Rahman, the host, and I am a recreation program specialist here at Montopolis Recreation Community Center, and I am here with my guest, Mr. Buzz Moran.
Hi.
Hi, Buzz.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So, Buzz, I've known you for a long time.
Long time.
And you are an audio engineer, and you are also a Gen Xer like me.
It's all true.
Yes. Yeah. So I'd like to just start talking about audio stuff first, and then we'll just piece into other things. It's going to lead us into a really cool rabbit hole, I think. So with audio engineering, like you've done some pretty wild programs, but I'll tell you the one that I remember you the most from. And one might think, those who know us, it would be Intergalactic Nemesis. No way. That's not the one that I remember you the most from. The one I remember you most from is being on the Biscuit Brothers TV show.
Biscuit Brothers.
So can you?
Man, that was the best.
Can you explain what Biscuit Brothers was?
Biscuit Brothers was a couple of guys here in town who just had a passion to create a children's show about music.
Yeah.
And they just did it. They partnered with our local PBS station.
Yes.
And they really just made it themselves.
Right.
And it was a pretty incredible show for something that was just like, which is funny because I at one point went down sort of this rabbit hole of finding out about the Wiggles, and it's the same thing. The Wiggles 100% were just these guys who really wanted to help kids and make a show, and they just did it. They would do these free shows at libraries in Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
So the Biscuit Brothers were kind of the same thing. They would just do these shows, and they just created this television show to try to teach kids about music, which I got to say that, you know, around the 90s, so part of just get into all these little weird things.
Yeah.
Part of the thing I love with sound is just things that make sound and make noise. And I would always go to toy stores to find musical toys and things. I like the sounds created by different things.
Yeah.
And around the 90s, it started happening, and the 2000s, where children's musical toys started being mostly these electronic things where you'd sort of like, it looked like a keyboard, but you'd push one button and it just played a little melody. And it doesn't teach you anything.
Right.
And so I feel like there was even this deeper need for kids to be sort of given a deeper knowledge of
the music and instruments and the things that
everything.
Yeah. You know what's really fascinating is that there is you've always kind of encompassed and embodied this sort of retro audio vibe. and I forgot to mention, I always mention on every podcast here, is that so the city of Austin deems a senior as someone who's 50 and above.
Well,
so that qualifies us.
Yeah, we're the senior class.
Yes, and typically a lot of the programming is targeted towards 60 and up, so there's not a whole lot for the 50 to 60 age group, and we're sort of in a unique life space right now. You know, we have kids who are probably a little bit older now, on their way to becoming an adult, if not already an adult, and also we might be taking care of parents, and we're still working, and so we just got a lot going on.
Yeah,
that
is true.
And so what I think about what we grew up around and how we were shaped, it's really different. That's sort of the name why I chose this name, Latchkey Legends, because that sort of defines our generation. Were you ever a latchkey child?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think at the time, at least, I don't know if it was just my family or whatever, but I didn't know the term latchkey.
Mm-hmm. Neither did I.
I think when I finally heard it, I was just like, somebody locks their kids up or something? Like, I didn't know. Yeah. But I believe, isn't it? It's just sort of like you're kind of on your own,
right?
Basically, right? And yeah, I was definitely doing that.
So in that latchkey kind of atmosphere that you grew up around, is this where the whole kind of love for sound developed and all that sort of stuff? Or was that later? Or?
I'm not 100% sure. So I had two older brothers, and they were both very into music and had good taste, very wide-ranging tastes. And they had bands. One of them played drums, the other played bass, and they had bands all the time. And they would. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Moved to Austin in '91.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I've been here longer than I was in Wisconsin, but
right.
But anyway, so growing up, they were always playing music, and our family, like my parents, didn't play music, but they liked music, so we had music playing a lot, and
nice.
I think it was through music. I think I had a little bit of. At the time, I wouldn't have put the two together, music and sound.
Okay.
But definitely, they had those. Star Wars was a big thing for our generation, and they would have those television specials, the making of Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being particularly fascinated at the sound effects portions of those shows. Like I can still remember things from those specials.
Yeah.
And so just sort of like loving music, but also novel sounds, sounds that I hadn't heard before. Anything that was new was really exciting to me.
I don't know about you, but when I was a kid growing up in Champaign, Illinois, so not too far from you, like when I learned how to hit play and record at the same time on the cassette player, and it would capture me, and then I'd rewind and be able to hear myself back, that changed my world.
That was a huge one. And I was also, my brother had a tape recorder. It wasn't mine. But the little Radio Shack tape recorder.
Oh, yeah.
When I was allowed to stay up late enough to watch Saturday Night Live, I would record the musical acts. Oh. And I was, again, found that I was really attracted to the musical acts that were weirder. Devo, Captain Beefheart, Clash were all on there, but they were ones where I was like, oh, this is special. Listen to those songs over and over and over again.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, the tape recorder was a big thing. And then when I got a little older, like middle school, I think, I found out about 4-track recorders. And so I saved up and bought a used cassette 4-track, probably in maybe 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
Something like that.
Cool. Do you remember what brand by any chance?
Oh, it was a Tascam.
Oh, Tascam. Yeah. Okay, so
it was
you got a
Porta
Tascam.
1. The Tascam Porta 1.
Wow. Okay.
Which, well,
you know what my first foray into multi-tracking was on these reel-to-reel players. And those actually came out, I think, in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And that's what my dad had. And I just,
good
by
sound on
chance, I think in the late 80s, I think I might have been a sophomore or junior in high school, where I realized, I can record the left channel by itself and then undo the record function and then rewind it, hit the right, and the left would be playing while I could record on the right side. That blew my mind.
It's just, it's incredible what you can, these little basic things, which, I think we always talk about, generations now, there's all these differences that it's easy to think of them as, it's too bad they don't have what we had. They're missing out on this or that.
Sure.
And in a way, it's just changed. Mm-hmm. It's not as different as we think. So the approach is very different. But so us having to really get our hands dirty figuring out how to do the simplest thing. Wow, I recorded 2 different things on one tape.
Right.
Whereas now, you could use your phone to record.
Course. Yeah.
I don't know how many tracks you can put on there, but you can put GarageBand on your phone and you can record multi-tracks.
Yep.
And things like having to go to record stores and maybe talk to other people there to find out about new music. And just looking at what this record cover is weird. I'm going to spend $10 on this to find out if it's good or not.
Right.
And then I think a big thing was if you didn't like the record, sometimes I'd find myself listening to that record I didn't like over and over again, trying to figure out why I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Which now I'd just be like, well, I'm never going to listen to that. You're just streaming it and it doesn't cost anything. You're like, I don't like it. I'm not going to listen to it.
That's really interesting. I'd like to hear more about this because I've never heard anyone say this before. You'd listen to something to try to figure out why you didn't like it.
Yeah,
That's wild.
I mean, I bought a lot of records. I usually buy used records. I could still remember the majority of records I was buying were $4 or $4.50.
Yes.
And that was a difference.
Yeah.
Like it'd be like, well, this one's $4.50.
Right.
This one's $5. Yeah. I only wanted to spend $4 today.
Yes.
Like it's but I bought a lot of used records. And I should also mention like new records were like $10.
$10, right.
So I was like, wow, that's a lot of money.
That's got to be a very, very special purchase.
That's it.
It's got to be
You've got to know you want it, basically.
Right.
This is I vetted this artist already.
Yes.
But so I would, because I was buying used records, a lot of times I would just try something out that I'd heard of or looked cool, or I hung out a lot at a particular used record store. And so the clerk there was a friend and we would just talk about it. And she would suggest, oh, you should check this out. Or this just came in. I think you're going to dig this. So I did end up with records that I didn't really like. And I would sort of try to figure out why this one wasn't striking a chord with me. Because I had, again, very wide tastes. Like I was listening to hardcore punk rock. I was listening to Depeche Mode. I was listening to like whatever, just sounds. I wanted sounds. And I was buying records from other countries too. I would, get, here's a gamelan. All right, this is a new thing. Like, just whatever sounds.
So where did this come from? Like this open-mindedness to embrace sounds from all over? Because usually we have our genre of choice and we kind of go down that, and then we might play around here and there. But you seem like you're already wide open to take everything in.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it just had. I think it must have had to do with sounds. That I just was interested in sounds, and I still. I guess I should mention, because we mentioned like Intergalactic Nemesis, but what I've done a lot of in my life is making live sound effects, kind of like old radio shows. You would have the sound effects. So it's something in film, it's called Foley, but you're doing like, here's footsteps. Oh, here's the sound of somebody falling down. Here's the sound of a door creaking open. Right. But I got into that because of already sort of just kind of banging on whatever I could to make sounds. And I still find myself all the time like, here's a cool looking glass bowl. I can't just look at it. I got to tap on it. I got to see what tone does this thing make. And I will be disappointed of like, oh, it's cool looking, but boy, it just makes a crummy sound. So I often will have things like, I bought this thermos because I liked the way it sounded and I needed a thermos. Right. But I didn't buy this thermos because it didn't make a good sound.
Made you a good sound. Like, so you bought the thermos in not what kind of design it was, but what kind of sound it made.
It was the sound it made.
There's today, I guess they talk about it in terms of, ASMR.
Oh, yeah, right.
Where they amplify the sounds and it's almost like this therapeutic thing. Yeah.
I liked all this. Like, I like extremely not therapeutic sound as well. So, again, like in the 80s, listening to some industrial noise kind of things, and Einstürzende Neubauten, these bands that were just making, very strange stuff. What were they? Controlled Bleeding, Nurse with Wound, like just weird noise bands. So yeah, all of it. And I think it was just that. It was just wanting new sounds all the time.
Yeah. And so,
but I also love music.
Yeah. And there's music and sound. And since we talked about Intergalactic Nemesis, that is something that I think our generation got maybe a little bit of a taste, but that is kind of an older concept of that live radio show.
Yes, yeah.
That would actually have a person in-house making the audio while the storytelling was going on.
Yeah.
And Intergalactic Nemesis, like when did that come out? They came out in early 2000s? Or?
We did it for the first time, I think... I get this wrong sometimes, but I think it was 96.
Oh, even in the 90s. Okay.
And then we just kept sort of building on it and doing new versions. It was originally just sort of a live radio show, a fake radio show.
Right. But it
then became this comic book thing.
Yeah, and it definitely harkened back to, I guess, what was it, the 50s, 60s era kind of sci-fi kind of thing?
I mean, even 40s,
right,
30s, somewhat, but yeah.
But it got such attention that it drove y'all all the way to the Conan O'Brien show.
Yes, yeah,
Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
We went to Scotland. We toured the show around a bunch. We got to be on the TV. It was pretty wild. I don't know. Not that I can say for sure about anything, but I just wonder if it just sort of harkened back to this authentic like experience of storytelling, where it's just like it's not so produced. It's like there it is right in front of you. It's happening live. Yeah. I think that's probably a big part of it. I mean, that's got to be why we still have theater. Is that people still, some people want a live experience. They want to really feel like they are in a place. I mean, even going to a movie theater, being around other people. Sure. And even if there aren't other people, it's like you went somewhere other than your living room.
Right.
There's something different to that. And that's probably, when we talk about like record stores, that it's more like, because I've discovered a ton of fantastic music online. Yeah. Just like the young peoples do.
Right.
But there's also still something about going to places and being around other people. So I think that's definitely true.
Yeah. So let me pick your brain on this one.
You can
because
try.
I'll try with some tweezers. Between like the 80s had its cultural moments and the 90s had its cultural moments. Where were you in sort of that 80s to 90s audio transition?
That's a really good question.
Because things changed dramatically, I think.
Things did change. I mean, so I've always felt a little counterculture. I've
probably for both generations too.
Very much so. Yeah. And I would say that so there was a thing in the 80s, there was a lot of things that I liked that were how do we say it, corporate, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
The new wave turned into this thing that were that was a lot of it became the pop music. So there was things that I hated in the 80s that were pop music and things that I liked.
Yeah.
So the changeover to the 90s, I did not jibe with most of what was happening in the 90s, including even a lot of the what I was mainly at least exposed to in the 90s as far as underground music and things I was not that into. I felt like a lot of things turned to there was rock bands. I worked at a club called Emos that had a lot of sort of the change from punk rock to whatever the 90s had. But there was a lot of these bands.
Emos in here or in?
Yes, it was the Austin Emos.
Austin Emos.
Yeah. And I felt like there was a lot of bands that sounded good, but didn't have good songs.
Mm.
So there was all like, oh, this band sounds like AC/DC, only without great songs. And this band sounds like, I don't know, Bachman Turner Overdrive. I don't know, whatever. They all have, everybody was trying to be extreme and heavy. Everybody, you know, people getting tattoos on their necks.
Right.
It was like this time of trying, remember, even like the sports were extreme, right?
Yeah, everything
like,
was extreme.
Extreme. Like, let's take this to where we can.
Even the food brands were extreme.
Yeah, right.
Extreme Mountain Dew.
Yeah, over-flavored things, overly dangerous sports, overly tough-sounding music.
Right.
But not a lot of substance, and I don't mean substance of like meaning, but more even like stuff to care about within those things.
Right.
So, you know, there was still David Lynch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
There was still great things showing up here and there.
Right.
But, you know, like I was like in a surf band at that point and a punk rock band.
Right.
Because I wasn't totally into what was happening around me.
And interestingly, you mentioned David Lynch. I think that's also another good point of reference for Gen Xers is film, because in the 90s, that's when Pulp Fiction came out. And I think the whole idea of surf music and things like that all of a sudden started becoming more accepted. You would actually see surf bands.
Absolutely. I mean, it gave a new life to Dick Dale.
Yes.
Literally, Pulp Fiction was like, oh, now I can I can play cool shows again instead of state fairs.
Turn off the distortion, turn on the reverb, you know?
And that, I mean, it was great that there was a lot of openness to that. But there was this funny thing, too, of like, so one thing I loved in the 90s was Hong Kong movies. Were coming, you know, you'd find these weird, like we'd have to stay up till midnight.
Yes.
I can't remember if it was twice a month or once a month to go to this weird dollar theater that would show a midnight Hong Kong film. You didn't know what they were playing.
Yes.
Hog Auditorium at the university was doing a bunch. It was amazing, these great films.
Didn't Alamo Drafthouse do stuff?
And then, well, Alamo's...
Oh, that was a little bit later.
I can't remember when they started, but a little later. They definitely did. And they gave me a chance to do live sound effects to movies. And we started doing Kung Fu movies originally with that, but...
that's so amazing. Oh, my gosh.
but yes, back to films.
Yes.
I do keep thinking about what a funny thing was that... Reservoir Dogs was a huge sort of moment for film.
Absolutely.
And it spawned sort of like hundreds of films where people had to hold guns.
Oh, yeah.
It was the big gun films, cool guys with guns. And you look at sort of the covers, the cover art for tons of 90s films, and it's all people holding guns, pistols, and they're holding them sideways and stuff.
Right.
Quentin Tarantino's stuff was coming out of the Hong Kong films.
Yeah, right.
Like,
it was deeply influenced by that.
Deeply, so it was this very funny thing, but it was also, you watch so many of those movies and you're like, they're really clumsy.
Of course.
There's this, and that's of course a lot of 80s movies. You know, they're just weird cocaine films. They're just kind of nuts. But I will say that just going back to the 80s, David Lynch's Eraserhead was this sort of huge influence on me when a buddy of mine and I were looking for a film to rent one night when we were in, it might have even been in like 8th grade at that point. And like, let's watch this thing. We've heard of this. Let's rent this. And at some point, the clerk at the video store said, "Y'all have rented this 11 times so far." I was like, oh, all right. So this is a pretty important film.
Wow. So Eraser, man, as junior high kids watching Eraserhead over and over again, what did that do to you? Because that's a kind of unsettling film.
I feel like, I have a theory also of that, like, your influences are not always things that change you, but things that reinforce things that are already in you. In other words, like I feel like in a lot of ways, seeing Eraserhead, for my buddy and I, it was like, this is what we've been looking for. This is what we wanted. Like, this is art.
Yeah.
And it makes you think. And it's something you've never seen before.
Right. It's not like it's horror.
And it's not a horror film.
Yeah.
But it's
unsettling.
It's not a normal film.
Yeah, it's not a regular film either. Did you like stuff like The Twilight Zone at all? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So and it really is kind of like this just step forward from that. Is like, what if instead of these Twilight Zone little parables, what if something really weird happens, and you're just in a world where nobody explains what's happening.
Right.
It's just you're in this world. You're like, what is this world? And I think that's really what it felt like, is you trying to figure out, where am I? What does it mean?
Yeah.
And we did spend a lot of time doing that trying to figure it out.
And I think
the soundtrack to it was incredible. Everything was new about that film for us.
Yeah. And then, was it the Pixies or Kim Deal covering that Heaven song?
Right. Which I think we had started covering it on the 4-track.
Oh, really?
Before that, and I don't think we ever finished that one, but we had, had the same idea.
When you were in bands, what were you playing, drums, or what was your instrument?
I played guitar and drums.
Oh, guitar and drums.
I was never a great drummer, but I did play drums in several bands.
Hey,
Yeah, I did what I could.
Okay.
But yeah, guitar and drums mostly. Although then, like in the surf band, I played bass.
Yeah.
Because, it's just sort of a big guitar.
What do you feel about now everything has been so digitized, right? And you don't necessarily need to research anything. You're automatically just given a sound library. I mean, and so then you just kind of have to sift through the library and just create. I mean, are you okay with that, or do you feel like they're missing a part of this?
So we're talking about sort of specifically with music, right?
Yeah.
So around the pandemic time, I had been always like from the. So one of my older brothers had gotten a Grandmaster Flash EP, an album, back really probably 1980.
Yep.
I don't know when it was. It was The Message.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was 79, 80, something around there.
Definitely 81. At least late 70s, early 80s for sure.
And that was, to me, that was like another huge door where it's just like, whoa, this sounds totally different from other music. Like, this is amazing. And I always enjoyed that about it. And it's funny because I didn't care for 90s hip hop really either, which is, at least for a long time, was considered kind of a golden era of hip hop.
Sure.
Because it was funk loops.
Right.
And I didn't care about, it was just like, oh, this is just like a song, except without it really being a song. You just took part of a song, and it just wasn't interesting to me. During the pandemic, and I had liked some other, Cool Keith and things, that were around that time, 2000s, that were a little weirder. But during the pandemic, my son, who at that time was, I guess, like 14, he started finding some hip hop and wanting to play things for me. He started playing things for me, and we bonded on the more underground things. Like we both liked the weirder music. We both liked the things that were just more stranger, more interesting. And through that, it kind of opened doors for me also with realizing that, first of all, that I didn't have to. Okay, so I work with a composer here in town named Graham Reynolds.
Yes.
And he is very much a musician. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's a piano player, a drummer. And so I'm with him recording his stuff, mixing, editing, and also using lots of MIDI instruments, taking something he's played and like, let's send this part to this, let's send this part to that.
Yep.
But through hip hop, realizing that you can make what you want, how you want.
Right.
And so really opening up to fake instruments, elements of things, and not being so precious or scared about where it comes from or what's being played. And I found that it's actually expanded instead of, and so again, it's what you bring to it.
Right.
So there are people who are, I made 20 beats today, and I sat down and I opened up Ableton Live and I looped a bunch of junk, and it sounds like what everybody else is making, and like, that's fine. You're doing something. But if you're bringing to it, you're bringing yourself into it. And so whatever you create with whatever tools.
Right.
So really the same as struggling with a cassette 4-track is struggling with, how do I take all of this technology or whatever, create something that I'm satisfied with the sound of.
Yeah, that is a very enlightened, and I dare say a Gen X type of perspective, where you kind of evolve from a more sort of purist kind of outlook, perhaps, in terms of
right. Coming from bands and things, and just going like, oh yeah, we're all just making stuff.
Yeah,
it's art. It's just
ultimately it's an expression of you, however you craft it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like getting into that part where it's like, well, in a way, there isn't bad art and good art. There's art you like and art you don't like.
I love that.
And so a bunch of people are making things that I don't like, and that's all right.
That's okay.
That's okay. And all of these things, right? You can call record albums vinyls, and that's fine because we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's cool. Like everything evolves, but like it's just what you bring to it.
Totally. And God, before we sign off, this is why I just love chatting with you and could chat with you for hours upon hours upon hours.
I didn't even realize we'd started.
And this is the thing that I want to really just hit home, because I think what you just said, there's so much to learn from this idea of you listening to things, trying to understand why you didn't like it.
Oh, yeah.
I think if we can take that to even a meta idea of perspective.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I don't agree with this idea, but let me try to understand why I don't agree with that idea.
Somebody made this. What is it about it that makes it exist?
Yeah.
And what is it about it that's different from what I'm looking for?
Right. Which taps into this idea of having empathy to understand what was made in front of you, and then also self-awareness, understanding what it is that your values are and how do those two things work together.
Yeah.
Dang, Buzz, you just hit us with that.
Yeah, me too. Hit me with it. You hit me with it. Maybe I hit you with it first. I don't know,
did.
But all right. Latchkey.
Yeah, Latchkey. Well, thank you so much for being on here. Maybe another day we can bring in you and Graham to talk about the films you've worked on.
Oh, man. Yeah, that would be great. I don't think you really even need me around. Graham's a great talker, too.
Oh, man, but we got to have you.
We'll make it happen. It'll be great.
Oh, thank you again, Buzz.
This was a huge pleasure.
To be continued. And thank you all out there for listening.
Thanks for listening.